It is very hard for archaeologists to explain how that was done using purely leverage and mechanical advantage.
When Graham Hancock walked into the heart of Egypt's granite quarries, what he saw didn't fit the story we've been told for centuries. This stone wasn't just cut, but looked machined. The grooves were curved, precise, and deep, as if carved by a drill that spun faster than any hand tool could. For years, experts called these primitive cuts, but Hancock knew better. He set out to prove that these stones carried traces of a forgotten technology that could rewrite everything we think we know about ancient Egypt. The impossible cuts that started it all. The mystery begins inside the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where an unfinished granite sarcophagus sits quietly among the relics of Egypt's old kingdom. At first glance, it looks like any other ancient coffin until you look closer. The inner chamber of the box, carved from a single block of red Aswan granite, bears tool marks so clean, so uniform, and so precisely aligned that they resemble the work of a modern industrial machine. Yet according to official archaeology, this sarcophagus was shaped over 4,000 years ago using only copper tools, wooden hammers, and sand as an abrasive. For Graham Hancock, this single artifact raised a huge question. How could a civilization without iron or steel, cut, smooth, and hollow, out one of the hardest stones on Earth? Granite, which ranks about 6 on the Mohs hardness scale, while copper barely reaches 3. In simple terms, copper is too soft to bite into granite. At best, it can scratch its surface. But the sarcophagus's interior showed deep symmetrical curves and right angles that suggested some form of rotary cutting or mechanized drilling. Researchers studying the object noted perfectly circular striations of fine spiral lines wrapping around the interior, consistent with the path left by a high-speed rotating tool. These weren't random chisel marks or uneven abrasions. They were concentric and evenly spaced, as though the stone had been carved by a modern core drill or lathe. To test the theory, engineers and stoneworkers attempted to reproduce similar cuts using traditional copper tubes filled with quartz sand, as Egyptologists claim the ancients did. The results were nowhere near as smooth or consistent. Even with maximum effort, it took hours to cut just a few millimeters deep. At that rate, finishing the sarcophagus's interior would have required months of non-stop drilling per inch. The energy, time, and precision needed simply didn't match the tools supposedly available at the time. Hancock wasn't the only one intrigued. British engineer Chris Dunn, who examined similar cores and sarcophagi, measured the rate of spiral descent on the drill marks. The results suggested an impossibly high feed rate, meaning the tool had moved through the granite faster than any copper drill could under human pressure. To achieve that, the tool would have needed consistent rotational torque, something powered and stable, possibly a mechanical or vibrational system unknown to modern archaeology. If true, it meant that whoever cut the sarcophagus had access to technology capable of controlling speed, pressure, and precision, far beyond what primitive hand tools could do. Some researchers propose that the Egyptians used bow drills or tubular drills with hard stone abrasives. But even then, the accuracy of the inner curves and the smoothness of the walls still didn't add up. The unfinished nature of the sarcophagus makes it even more revealing. It froze the process mid-work, showing raw evidence of how it was being shaped, capturing a forgotten technique in progress. For Hancock, this was the starting point, the proof that something about the mainstream story didn't fit. To uncover what really made these perfect cuts possible, he decided to examine the ancient drill holes themselves, where the fingerprints of lost technology might still remain. Granite under the microscope. In the early 1980s, a team of researchers at the University of Pennsylvania Museum decided to examine Egypt's stonework using modern methods. They focused on one key piece of evidence, the drill holes found in granite and basalt objects across Egypt, especially at Giza and Aswan. Instead of guessing how the ancient craftsmen worked, the team created silicone molds of the holes and the stone cores left behind. These molds captured the exact shape and texture of the drill marks, allowing scientists to study them under a microscope without damaging the original artifacts. What they saw raised more questions than answers. The drill marks showed uniform, concentric ridges that wrapped neatly around the cores. These ridges weren't random scratches from uneven hand pressure. Even more surprising was that the spacing between the ridges gradually changed along the length of the hole, meaning the drill's pressure or speed was being adjusted during operation. In modern manufacturing, that kind of control requires machinery capable of maintaining consistent torque and speed, not hand tools. Another major discovery was the shape of the holes. They weren't solid bore holes. Instead, the molds revealed hollow centers, showing that the ancient Egyptians were using a tubular drilling technique where a hollow tube, not a solid rod, grinds through the stone to produce a circular core. Tubular drilling is standard in modern engineering, but according to history, it wasn't invented until the 19th century. The idea that Egyptians could do this over 4,000 years ago challenged everything archaeologists thought they knew about ancient technology. When scientists calculated the cutting rate based on the spiral groove patterns, they were stunned. The data showed that the drill advanced roughly 0.1 inch per revolution. In simple terms, for every turn of the drill, it bit 1/10 of an inch into solid granite. For comparison, even with diamond-tipped drills today, that's a significant cutting rate. Copper tools, no matter how much sand is added as an abrasive, cannot achieve that speed without deforming or melting under pressure. Microscopic analysis also revealed that the striations were too precise to be made by human hand pressure. The grooves had a steady rhythm, implying that the drill didn't wobble or slow down, which is something that could only happen if it was powered by a consistent source, such as a weighted mechanism or rotary device. These weren't random experiments. The same pattern appeared in different cores, found across multiple sites, suggesting a standardized technique rather than isolated trial and error. Over the years, several experiments have tried to reproduce these results using copper tubes and quartz sand. None came close to matching the precision or cutting rates seen on the ancient cores. Even with modern replicas, researchers could only scratch the granite surface after hours of work, leaving rough, uneven grooves. The ancient examples, by contrast, had sharp, smooth walls with consistent spiral marks from start to finish. That confusion and the inability to replicate the results pushed both scientists and independent researchers to look deeper into the one missing piece of the puzzle: the tools themselves. The tools and techniques. Archaeologists have unearthed several examples of ancient Egyptian drilling and carving tools over the years. The most common finds include copper tube drills, bow drills, dolerite pounders, and abrasive sandstone blocks. These were the official tools believed to be used during Egypt's Old and New Kingdom periods for shaping granite, quartzite, and basalt, which are some of the hardest stones on Earth. However, when these tools are tested under controlled conditions, they fail to produce results that match the precision seen in ancient artifacts. To explain this, some researchers have proposed that the Egyptians may have used abrasive materials such as emery, corundum, crushed quartz, or sandstone slurries in combination with their copper drills. These abrasive particles, when mixed with water, could theoretically grind the stone surface while the copper acted as a soft guiding frame. This method does produce wear patterns similar to those seen on certain limestone and softer stone artifacts. However, granite and basalt are much harder. The abrasives would quickly lose their edge, and the copper would bend under pressure long before producing deep, clean cuts. A few archaeologists believe the Egyptians might have taken it a step further by embedding hard mineral grains directly into the drill edges, creating a kind of composite tool. This would mean pressing or fixing small crystals of quartz or corundum into a copper or wooden tube, turning it into a rough form of a modern diamond-tipped bit. However, to date, no actual artifact has been found to prove this. There are no drill bits with embedded abrasives preserved in museum collections or excavation records. The evidence for such tools is purely indirect, coming from the microscopic grooves on stone surfaces. Graham Hancock, however, sees this absence as unusual. He argues that if the Egyptians really used copper tools for such extensive work, some broken examples should have survived, especially considering how many granite sites exist. Instead, most of the discovered drills are small and appear suitable only for soft stone or wood. Hancock suggests that perhaps the real drill materials were recycled or made from organic materials that didn't survive over time, such as hardwood shafts coated with mineral slurries or stone tubes reinforced with unknown binding agents. Another theory involves the mechanics of the process. Some engineers point out that to achieve the depth and precision seen in ancient holes, the drilling motion had to be stable and sustained. This could have been achieved through weighted drilling systems, where a fixed weight pressed the drill downward while it was rotated continuously, a setup similar to early lathes. This would keep pressure constant and allow deeper penetration into the granite. While no ancient Egyptian lathe has been found, artistic depictions from tombs show craftsmen using ropes, pulleys, and bows to rotate tools, hinting that such principles were understood. Even so, no experiment using these reconstructions has matched the exact quality of ancient cores. The modern replicas are close, but still produce inconsistent striations and irregular hole diameters. This gap continues to puzzle experts and fuels Hancock's claim that Egypt's craftsmen may have inherited or rediscovered techniques from a lost technological tradition. But to see how advanced this mysterious technique truly was, we must examine where these drilling methods were applied across Egypt's hardest monuments and most sacred sites. Secrets hidden in the quarries of Aswan. The most direct physical evidence of ancient Egyptian stone-cutting methods lies in the granite quarries of Aswan, a city near the modern border of Sudan. This area supplied most of the granite used in Egypt's temples, obelisks, and statues, including some of the largest pieces ever attempted in the ancient world. The most famous of these is the unfinished obelisk, a massive monument that still lies partly attached to the quarry floor. Archaeologists believe that the obelisk was commissioned by Queen Hatshepsut around 1478 BC. If completed, it would have stood about 42 meters tall, roughly 137 feet, and weighed nearly 1,200 tons, one-third larger than any other obelisk ever erected in Egypt. However, the stone cracked during construction, forcing workers to abandon it. This left behind an almost perfect snapshot of the quarrying process frozen in time. The walls and base of the trench surrounding the obelisk are covered in parallel grooves and smooth, curved channels. These markings are not random. They run in neat, consistent directions, as if carved by a guided tool rather than by chaotic hammering. Archaeologists generally attribute these markings to dolerite pounding balls, which are round stones made from an equally hard volcanic rock used to chip away at the granite surface. More than 30 such pounding balls have been found at the Aswan site, supporting this theory. However, when the evidence is closely examined, problems arise. The cramped trench of the unfinished obelisk makes it nearly impossible to swing the tools effectively, and constant pounding could easily cause the stone hammers to shatter. This mismatch between theory and evidence led engineer Christopher Dunn to study the quarry marks in detail. In his book, Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, Dunn points out that the smooth, scooped surfaces inside the quarry are inconsistent with random hand percussion. Instead, they resemble mechanical abrasion marks, similar to what a modern cutting wheel or high-speed grinder would produce. Some of the channels even curve under the body of the obelisk, forming undercuts that would be impossible to achieve with handheld pounding stones. Dunn concluded that the quarry surfaces show signs of controlled, directional force, possibly involving rotary or vibrational motion. He noted that even with today's tools, producing those exact curved grooves would require equipment capable of angle-controlled rotation and stable torque. Graham Hancock supports this view, suggesting that the marks could represent an advanced, or at least forgotten, technique used by ancient craftsmen who were far more technologically skilled than historians typically assume. Egyptologists remain cautious, sticking to the explanation that repetitive hammering and sand abrasion could have created these patterns over time. Yet even among mainstream researchers, the Aswan site raises difficult questions. Why are the grooves so uniform? Why are some surfaces smooth instead of pitted? And how could workers precisely shape a 1,200-ton stone with hand tools alone? These inconsistencies are what Hancock calls the fingerprints of lost technology. To him, the quarry doesn't just show the Egyptians' skill, it shows that they were continuing a system of knowledge that already existed. That theory gained more strength when similar precision cuts and tool marks began showing up not just in Aswan, but across Egypt's temples and pyramids, from Giza to Luxor. Hancock's theory, a forgotten technology remembered. Graham Hancock's main argument about Egypt's mysterious granite work centers on a simple but bold claim. The precision found in ancient Egyptian stone cutting did not begin in Egypt. He believes it was inherited knowledge from an earlier, advanced civilization that existed before the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago. According to Hancock, this unknown culture developed sophisticated engineering techniques that were later passed down through survivors who helped rebuild early civilizations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley. To him, the Egyptians were not the inventors of precision stonework. They were the inheritors of a system of skills and methods whose origins had already been lost to time. Hancock points to physical evidence that he says supports this theory. Across several ancient sites, not only in Egypt, but also in South America and India, there are similar tool signatures that modern researchers struggle to explain. For example, tubular drill holes with spiral grooves can be found in the granite quarries of Aswan, the stone platforms of Pumapunku in Bolivia, and certain monolithic temples in southern India. These sites are thousands of miles apart and separated by vast time periods, yet the same patterns appear: deep circular cuts, tight-fitting stone joins, and surfaces smoothed to near-modern tolerances. He argues that this consistency hints at a shared engineering heritage that might have originated before recorded history. Rather than imagining futuristic machines, Hancock believes this lost technology might have relied on advanced control of abrasives, pressure, and geometry. He also suggests that many ancient builders may have been replicating methods they didn't fully understand. Over time, the practical science behind these methods could have eroded into ritual or tradition. Ancient craftsmen might have been following sacred instructions handed down from ancestors or mythic gods, unaware that they were preserving traces of a once well-understood technology. This might explain why Egyptian workers seemed capable of extraordinary precision without leaving behind any complex tools or machines. Hancock's argument doesn't go unchallenged. Egyptologists and engineers counter that there is no direct evidence of a pre-Egyptian civilization with advanced machinery. They insist that ancient artisans achieved their results through a mix of persistence, abrasive materials like quartz sand, and simple but clever techniques involving manpower and repetition. Yet even within mainstream research, there is an admission that some of the tool marks, such as those on granite cores and the walls of the unfinished obelisk, do not fully fit with what copper and sand alone could accomplish. This gap between theory and evidence keeps the debate alive. For Hancock, that gap is the proof. He sees it as the surviving trace of a forgotten era of builders who once mastered the manipulation of stone with unmatched precision. For years, the discussion stayed theoretical until recent scientific analyses returned to these granite cores and quarries, producing results that challenged both sides of the argument. The proof in the stone, Serapeum at Saqqara, reveals the truth. Hidden beneath the sands of Saqqara lies proof that defies logic. It is known as the Serapeum, a massive underground complex carved through solid limestone, housing granite boxes so huge and perfect that even modern engineers pause in disbelief. The boxes are said to weigh around 70 tons each, carved from single blocks of black granite. According to Egyptologists, this complex was built during the reign of Pharaoh Khimweset in the 13th century BC to serve as tombs for sacred Apis bulls. But when engineers and researchers like Graham Hancock, Chris Dunn, and members of the Kemet School examined the evidence, what they saw told a different story. The surfaces of these granite boxes are shockingly precise. Chris Dunn decided to test their accuracy using high-precision measuring instruments. What he found challenged every assumption about ancient stonework. The interior walls of the boxes were not only smooth to a mirror-like finish, but also flat within thousandths of an inch, a level of precision found only in modern machine tooling. The corners were perfectly square, and the inner edges so sharp that you could easily cut your finger running it along the line. When Dunn compared these boxes to others found in Khafra's pyramid, he noticed something stunning. The precision was the same. The boxes inside the Serapeum shared identical craftsmanship to those created over 1,000 years earlier. Yet according to mainstream dating, stoneworking in Egypt was supposed to have declined by that time. Even more telling, the dating of the Serapeum boxes was based on pottery fragments found near them. not the boxes themselves. This means their true age could be far older than Egyptologists assume. Hancock argued that these boxes were not burial containers at all. Their finish, symmetry, and geometry suggest they served a different, perhaps technological or energetic purpose. The boxes seem engineered rather than crafted, as if their builders were following blueprints rather than artistic instinct. Their function might have involved acoustics, vibration, or energy resonance, as their placement inside deep limestone tunnels hints at a deliberate design meant to interact with the earth itself. There are no signs of tool marks consistent with copper chisels or pounding stones. Instead, microscopic studies show spiral patterns suggesting the use of a high-speed rotary cutting tool that should not exist in ancient Egypt. This overwhelming precision, combined with the lack of credible tool evidence, has made the Serapeum one of the strongest arguments for advanced ancient technology. To Hancock, it is not just a tomb, but physical proof of a lost civilization's engineering skill, preserved in stone. With the mystery deepening, Egypt began re-examining its artifacts, and what they found brought Hancock's theory back into the spotlight. The evidence that changes everything. In 2025, a new wave of 3D scans at Giza and Saqqara revealed mathematically consistent spirals carved into ancient granite drill cores. These ultra-high-resolution laser images showed perfect geometric rhythms, mirroring patterns generated by modern machining software. This discovery corroborated what Graham Hancock and engineer Chris Dunn had theorized for years. Dunn's earlier examination of Petrie's granite drill cores had already indicated an astonishing feed rate of 0.100 inch per revolution, which is a cutting efficiency 500 times greater than modern diamond drills. Yet, ancient tools would not have spun as fast as contemporary equipment. When Dunn revisited the trenches surrounding the unfinished obelisk at Aswan, he observed similar patterns. The horizontal striations across the granite walls showed signs of consistent feeding and pausing marks left when a cutting tool retracts to clear waste before resuming. This was clearly systematic and engineered, not the random work of handheld stone pounders. So, what tool could achieve this? If hand pounding and copper drills couldn't explain the results, and if the ancient Egyptians lacked iron or diamond tools, the question becomes, who did this and when? Hancock suggests these stone-cutting methods might have originated from an earlier, lost civilization with advanced knowledge of energy and vibration. Further supporting this view are other anomalies long ignored by traditional archaeology. The strange object from the tomb of Prince Sabu at Saqqara, carved from brittle schist, resembled a futuristic turbine blade or mechanical rotor rather than a decorative bowl. Its aerodynamic and symmetrical shape, with curved fins spiraling from a central hub, defied explanation. Even Emery, the archaeologist who discovered it, admitted its purpose was a complete mystery. To this day, no one has explained how such an object could be carved from fragile schist without breaking, unless advanced tools or molds were used. Additionally, massive drill holes at Karnak feature walls thinner than what even modern drills can maintain without deformation. These are not products of chance or artistic curiosity, but rather traces of a lost technological process. While some skeptics argue that ancient artisans simply possessed extraordinary patience and skill, the 2025 experiments proved otherwise. Even with modern replicas, the traditional explanation fails. The data is unequivocal. The grooves are too precise, the geometry too uniform, and the engineering too deliberate. The weight of all this evidence from the 3D spiral scans, the machined trenches, the Sabu disk, and the impossible cores points to one conclusion. Someone in pre-dynastic times possessed advanced technology capable of precision engineering far beyond copper and sand. This made Graham Hancock stand on his point that the evidence of ancient technology is cut in stone. What do you think about this discovery? Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.